So what method or the approach to be adopted for the evaluation of these three cases? So number one, in case if the two entities are listed, and in that case we will have to go for input level 1, and that means what? That means since both the entities are listed, we will need to decide the exchange ratio for the merger between these two listed entities based on the quoted price of these two entities. In case if the two entities are not listed, then obviously in the hierarchy of fair value hierarchy as per the index 113, level 1 input will not be applicable. So we will have to in that case go for level 2 input, which means to find out the uh, observable data, observable input or observable information. That means what? That means we will see in case if there are valuation information available with regard to the two companies which are merging together. Now, which in my view is highly unlikely to happen, because two entities which are not listed uh, and are merging together, it is highly unlikely to find out identical companies and whose valuations are available, and then use those informations for the purpose of finding the swap ratio or the exchange ratio. In my view is highly impossible. So the market approach in case of unlisted company is ruled out. Now the third then becomes the level input level 3. So input level 3 is what? Unobservable data. That means the two entities which are not listed. So what you do the evaluation of both these entities based on the discounted cash flow. And based on the discounted cash flow, you find out the value of the shares of both these companies, and based on that you will decide as to what should be the exchange ratio. Now the third situation where one entity is listed and the another entity is not listed. Now how do you decide the exchange ratio? So obviously ultimately remember, the exchange ratio, whatever it may be, it has to be agreed between the shareholders of both the entities. So it's not that that the entity which is listed would say that I am a listed entity, and for a listed entity valuation has to be done based on the level 1 input, that is the quoted price of the company, and therefore that price has to be taken for the purpose of valuation of mine. Now that company can say, but ultimately it has to be also agreed by the shareholders of the unlisted company. So in my view, in this case, again the valuation can be done taking the quoted price, and that quoted price can then be supported by the discounted cash flow. So if the quoted price is supported by the discounted cash flow, then the quoted price becomes the basis for the purpose of merger, for the purpose of this merger. In case if the quoted price is not supported by the discounted cash flow method, then obviously and depending on who is in urgent need of the merger, whether it is the listed company who is in the urgent need of merger, or it is the unlisted company who is in the urgent need of merger, depending on the requirements of both these entities, the board of directors will need to discuss together. They will need to take the shareholders into confidence, and that is how they will decide the valuation of both these entities. So three situations, and this is how the valuation will be decided in case of a merger of these three combinations. I hope that answers your query, Sanjeev. Okay, so Sanjeev, you are writing unlisted private company having no business, as it is only an asset oriented company or investment company. Okay, so if it is an investment company, remember in case of investment company, it is a private company, unlisted company obviously. So how do they do the valuation? So the valuation in case of a private company which is an investment company, investment company, now you can still use the discounted cash flow. And how do you use the discounted cash flow? So in case of a private company which is having investment, so you will need to do the valuation of those investments individually. and the valuation of those investments can be done individually depending on what is the situation of those assets, those investments. Are those investments earning revenue? If those investments are earning revenue, then of course you will use the income approach for that particular investment. But if an investment is not having earning capacity, in that case you will go for the cost approach or the asset approach for the valuation of that company. So this is our sum total of all the investments. You will find out the value of this unlisted private company. Yeah, okay. So Prabhakar, your question is if the merger is within closely held companies. Fortunately or incidentally, Prabhakar, the valuation in case of merger between within closely held companies is much easier. And why it is much easier? Because the management of both the entities are same, and therefore there is the interest in those two companies which are merging are also common. So since the interest in the two entities are common, and therefore it goes rather smoothly, because the people taking decision on both sides are same, and therefore they can take a decision. But as regards the approach to use, since they are closely held companies, obviously they are not listed. Obviously you will not be able to use the market approach in case of the closely held companies. So the only option that is left with you is to use the cash flow, is to use the discounted cash flow, that is income approach. So for the unlisted closely held companies, you will use the discounted cash flow method for the purpose of finding value for the merger. Okay, Sanjeev, that okay, Prabhakar, I hope that answers your question, right? So then the last question that I can take again from Sanjeev means we can use asset approach wherever discounted cash flow application is not possible. Sanjeev, my answer to your question will be, it's not that there are set rules that you use this approach in this situation, this approach. Actually, every case will need to be viewed differently for the purpose of valuation. So ideally, and we are talking about situation where the entities are not listed. So when the entities are not listed, the best approach to use for the purpose of valuation is the discounted cash flow approach. Now, in case if the discounted cash flow approach is not possible, and it is not possible because the assets which are owned by the two entities are not generating any revenue. In that case, of course, you will use the asset approach, because what is the value? Value is the utility that you will get from an asset. So if an asset is not having capability of generating revenue, then what is its value? Its value is at what price this asset can be sold in the market. So in that case, you will use the asset approach. So Mr. Rajora, I think with this we can conclude this session. So thank you so much to IOB RVF, and thank you to all the participants, and thank you to Mr. Rajora, and thank you so much, and wishing you all the very best. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Pramod sir, our session is over. Thank you so much, sir, for your wonderful session. Thanks to all members. We conclude the session here. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
sir.
Thank you.